Coral reefs are essential to all life on Earth. They act as a barrier and protect us from flooding, tsunamis, hurricanes, and sea level rise. They are biodiverse forests of the sea. They contain over 4,000 different species of fish. About a quarter of all marine life species spends at least part of their life in coral reefs. Phytoplankton rely on coral reefs and provide us with 50% of the oxygen that we breathe. So it all comes from corals. And people are dying because of the lack of fish as a food source, the lack of protection from storms, floods, and hurricanes, and as we see in Florida, and in the future, possibly the lack of oxygen. About 500 million people rely on coral reefs currently, and they save us billions of dollars globally from the protection they serve. $100 million from the Florida Keys alone. Half of all corals have been lost since the 1950s, and 99% are expected to be lost by 2050 without any restoration or changes because of global warming. Global warming is one of the main drivers of coral reefs. Coral reefs are threatened by overfishing, fossil fuel emissions, ocean acidification, warming temperatures, and this all leads to coral bleaching. Coral bleaching is when corals turn from colorful, lively creatures into dead white and brown skeletons, and millions of algae live inside every coral polyp, but they are very sensitive to temperature warming in the ocean, which can cause algae to become stressed and eventually die. The symbiotic relationship between the algae and the corals is really complex, and without enough warming, the calcium carbonate shell that the algae and corals are made of can deteriorate and can't be replenished if there's too much warming, and the coral sends a warning signal, which first makes the coral brightly colored, and then it goes and turns into a white chalky skeleton and prevents algae from living on it and turns pale white. At this stage, it is still alive, but it is equivalent to being in a coma, and without any further cooling in the ocean, it eventually dies. And this problem arose in the 1980s when the first mass coral bleaching event occurred in the Great Barrier Reef, and this wiped out millions of acres of coral reef, and then it happened again in 2016 and 2017, 2 years in a row, and this is when half of the Great Barrier Reef died, and the most recent mass bleaching event occurred in 2023, and between 2023 and mid-May 2024, there have been at least 6 major coral bleaching events in the past 2 decades due to excessive warming and human activity alarming scientists. But fortunately, there have been some solutions. Marine protected areas have continually been established in the past few decades. They protect coral reefs from excessive fishing, mining, cargo, and other human activities. It has worked to a degree, but coral bleaching still occur. And another most recent technique has been extracting the sperm and egg of the corals and growing them in the nursery, repopulating the coral in damaged marine areas. This has also worked because corals take a long time to grow and reproduce naturally, and percentage of their offspring survival significantly increases from about 3 to 90% when grown in the lab. And they can attach them to rocks and corals with a hook, and they grow and adjust naturally to their environment. One organization has successfully grown about 70,000 new corals in decimated areas, and this hands-on method can restore coral reefs effectively with the proper funding and more technology. Another part is genetically modifying corals to withstand warmer temperatures, so the so-called super coral. But this method has not completely worked because it reduces the biodiversity. It's expensive and it does not address the root cause of carbon emissions. but if it can be done with different species, that would be great. One study found that many corals may have naturally evolving to withstand warmer temperatures in the past 2 decades, but that's just in a certain area, and mass bleaching events still occur. Restoration alone isn't expected to solve the problem. The problem mostly arises on fossil fuel emissions and our ability to reduce them and protect the ocean. And it's really important because we rely on coral reefs. And thank you.